Hello and welcome in, everyone. We got about a minute before we really get started. Glad to see everybody hopping in the chat there. So exciting. I'm Chris. I'll be your host for today, and this is my friend Jay Kranda.
I got some coffee here, and I'm ready to. I know we're gonna have some fun answering some questions, talking about digital ministry, digital strategy with church. There's all sorts of ways this conversation can go. So we're ready.
Yeah, before we dive in and get started, I've got some questions loaded up that you guys have submitted over the last couple of weeks. This is our third week in a series of talking about disciple making in a digital world. We're learning from Jay and others throughout this year how we can best use technology to reach people in an analog way, not to replace in-person interactions, but to facilitate. I don't want to say streamline because you don't really want to streamline relationships, but you want to use it to connect with people. So if you have a question over in the chat, right at the top, there's a button that says Q&A. Go ahead and put your question in the Q&A. Look at that. We already got our first one. Is the 50% discount code still valid this week? And the answer is yes.
It is. Yep. If you go to jkranda.com and you can get any resource 50% off. I've been really grateful for everybody who's used that over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, it'll be available through March, I believe.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Jay, for making that available to all of our friends attending here. A quick plug on upcoming webinars. So we were scheduling throughout the year. We have a number of great guests. We have one next week that I think you'll be especially interested in, and it is how to talk to leaders about generosity and giving. It is one of those things that either many churches avoid because they just don't want to talk about giving, but giving is very much in line with generosity and what's in the Bible and the tithe and, of course, offerings that help churches and nonprofits run. So he is going to be on the podcast with some of our customer success friends to talk about how to talk to leaders about it. So that would be church staff and anybody else that has a platform to encourage people to share what they know. Also coming up is Jen Lilly, who is an actress who loves Jesus and has written a book that's pretty awesome. She'll be in April. And then throughout the year. So if you want to stay in touch with what we're doing webinar-wise, we'll have many online workshops. You can sign up for the Tidely newsletter. You can find a link for that on our blog if you go over there and read a blog article, or we can send you a link after the show. So one question we always get is, will today be recorded? And it will. And in fact, your registration will get you a recording of today's webinar directly to your inbox. How easy is that? All right. Well, we're grateful that y'all are here. Let's get started, shall we? Now, we had a number of people share this sentiment, so I wanted to lead with it, right? So Jay obviously works at a very large church at Saddleback. And the curiosity is, how do we apply this to smaller churches? So the specific question here, what is your recommendation for small steps to be better represented digitally beyond just the YouTube, as my mom would say, the YouTube or the Facebook?
I love that. I love it. And just as kind of a reminder, one of the big reasons why I wrote my book, Online Church is Not the Answer, is because a lot of churches have limited time and resources. And I would say when streaming became really popular, specifically church online became popular in like the early 2000s, so many churches just started to they created a church online platform experience. Maybe they posted to Facebook or YouTube. And really the point of what I'm trying to get at in my book is I love online ministry. I love church online. I think there's a lot of reasons why it's compelling, but it's not one of the top 5 things a church with limited resources and time should be focusing on if you want to move your digital strategy forward, because I really think a lot of the opportunities for most churches is around digital discipleship in hybrid type of ministry settings, and not just pushing content out. Because really, putting your content on YouTube, it's just it's a modern way to do a TV ministry. And it doesn't really it's not that it's not helpful and useful for members that are sick or traveling, but it's there's a lot better ways to kind of leverage. So and so like to me, like a small church, if as somebody who I came to faith at a smaller church, I have tons of friends that plant churches and have done this. Usually what I'm trying to get at that size is, I really encourage smaller churches to not do video type of capture experiences of their services, to just do audio capture with like a podcast if you want to solve that problem. But where I think a lot of the strategy should be focused on is on member and volunteer engagement type of strategy. So like a
Mm.
weekly email. You might think that's really boring, but have an easy way for people to sign up, and just as the pastor or the leader, just send an email out every Thursday. I always bring up this example of, I remember I came to faith at a church under 500, and I remember being like a high schooler. I did not know what they were talking about on Sunday. And I a couple times ran into this where like I would invite friends to church at my high school, and all of a sudden they're talking about money. And I remember just being like, "Oh, this is a terrible I don't want my friends, this is their first thing." But you think about this, just like a weekly email on Thursday is such a simple thing that you can easily set up with services on Tithely. There's easy ways to do it on like Constant Contact or like a Squarespace or a MailChimp with no money. Like you can just send a weekly email. This is such a simple thing that I would focus on. Making sure have like a WhatsApp group with all your volunteers that you just, hey, we're getting ready. Like those are the simple things that I would do. And lastly, this is why I have the 4 S's of digital. It's what are streaming things you can do, what are social media things you can do, what are strengthening tools and services like maybe a WhatsApp group or a Zoom type of setting, and then what are systems that you need. And if you cover what are the small things you can do at that size in those 4 buckets, then it starts to feel healthy. But I would honestly, email and like a WhatsApp group for your volunteers are simple things you can do. And then lastly, and Chris, I want to hear your thoughts on this, is
Sure.
consider ways that you can supplement in-person events with Zoom type of events. And what I mean by that is, I know Zoom has its pros and cons, but not everything needs to be in person in a calendar year. And consider, maybe there are things with your volunteers. Maybe in a calendar year you meet once a month, but maybe in the month of December and during the summer you do Zoom type of settings because they're traveling and they're busy. And you kind of realize you need to supplement with online settings, and that's where I would lean in on.
Yeah, I think I would say a Zoom edition adds that extra level of connectivity beyond just a broadcast. And
Yep.
when I'm thinking about when my family and I travel a good bit, when we're not near a church on a Sunday, we would very much watch online. But the longer we travel, the more we're gone, the less we feel connected to the people. So the way we stay connected was through video chats. Not, I mean, not like I think it could work in a Zoom call. If we were to have a small group was who we stayed connected with, we would set up short Zoom calls with our small group. So I think it totally supplements, but it didn't replace it.
Yeah, it doesn't. I just think that this goes back to like I have 3 kids. I was joking on with my wife yesterday because my wife's been planning this event, so I've been a little bit more of Mr. Mom the last couple days.
Mhm.
I spent Monday driving an hour and 40 minutes my kids around to things on Monday, just getting them to things. And I bring it up as an example is like your members, your attenders are busy. And so when you do an in-person event or in-person training, make sure it's worth their time.
Yeah, true.
And then consider in a calendar year when you can relieve pressure and maybe, hey, we're going to do it on Zoom, because of, and that's why I bring up summer busy with travel and stuff. And then also December. And so like,
A
for example,
holiday.
and so that it's that idea of like maybe 10 times a year it's in person, but these 2 months you put it on Zoom. And those are ways you can, again, using the tool to amplify what you're doing, not replace it.
Yeah, that's great. Related to staying connected with people, how do you capture contact info from online?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do anything fancy here. A lot of this is how you communicate it and then how you drive people, but we just have saddleback.com/program, and essentially we balance between full videos. Like, one of the dynamics here on YouTube, one of the big shifts is most people watch full screen, or they're watching on an Apple
We're
TV
watching
app
on
or
like a
something.
smart TV or something.
Yeah, yeah, and so, like, they don't necessarily have the link in the description, but so we do text response, so you text this number and the form is sent directly to your phone, or we tell them, like, go to this form, but it's a simple URL, and then the key is we repeat the URL every week. So people know you go to saddleback.com/program to kind of get the digital program. That's how you fill out. And then we do series, will drive reasons to do it. But there's nothing like, you can hyperlink things, you can have end card graphics in YouTube. I got to be honest, none of that is like super compelling. We
Yeah,
just say a lot like, hey, we have this resource. Like, if you fill it out during this series, you'll get this, like, 8 ways to enhance your giving, or, like, 5 ways to improve your your Bible study time.
sure.
But there's nothing. I think this is the question I get asked a lot, and there's nothing. You will still struggle with, 500 people watching on YouTube, but you only get 5 responses. And all you can do is create a habit and repeat the same thing. And this is why having the same URL and repeating it over and over again is the most compelling thing. And then a couple times a year, have a special downloadable that drives it. But we do a lot of work on this to kind of make it very natural and people remember it.
The URL. So on the URL, when they fill out a form, you're getting their contact information like name, email, phone number?
Yeah, basic info, and we do try our best to make the least amount of required fields as possible. One of the things I always encourage people
Oh,
on
that's
this
a good one. Least amount
is,
of required fields. I like that.
yeah, the least amount as possible. The hard part is one of the key mechanisms here that people don't realize is that if I'm in person, I'm sitting in, like, a seat in your church. The more fields you have, naturally your eyes can kind of glance and fill out minimal amount of information, like,
Mm,
that they want. Like, so let's say you have this big card and there's a bunch. My eyes can scan all that and fill out only a couple things. On a digital form, you have to scroll, and the longer you scroll, the more annoying it is.
yeah.
And I bring this up that you have to actually ask for less on a digital form than you can get away with on a physical printed form. And that's a struggle. And our church has struggled through this. This is why long term, the more you have integrations, and this is where, like, systems like Logged In, and I know this is for bigger churches or
Mm,
more services. I know Tithely has a lot of these integrations. Like, this is why you have an enclosed system, so people remember you're logged in. But I would say, ask the least amount of information you need and rely on the follow up. Because at least if you can at least get an email or a phone number, then you can follow up on the back end. But don't ask 20,000 questions.
right.
Everybody hates that.
Family history.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like,
You can call that later, right?
yeah. You're like, just you can, if you get the phone number or the email, you can personally follow up later and ask all those additional. Again, easy on them, hard on you is kind of
Oh,
the principle there.
I like that. So being online, how do you get people to actively engage online, especially on social media?
Yeah.
So this sounds like they find viewership for streams and reels is good, but people aren't engaging. What are some tips that y'all do at Saddleback to get people to engage with your online content?
Yeah, and obviously this is a moving target with uh, platforms and trends. It can feel, really. This is where you can feel like you're drowning because you can't keep up with all the
Is
tech.
Saddleback on TikTok?
Yeah, no, we are not on TikTok. I think technically we might have an account, but we don't use
Yeah.
TikTok. I will say, one really important thing. There used to be this big approach in a lot of these spaces, and I'm by far not a social media expert, so do not rely on all the tricks and tips on with me on this. But there used to be this approach is to be everywhere. The fancy word is to kind of say omni-channel. Be everywhere. I think most churches are realizing, really just pick one platform that you're really good at.
Mm. Maybe
And
ones
but
that people use the most too.
yeah, that use like, for example, like, you know, this is a generalization, but like our church is, our lead pastor is in his early 40s. We're a church of 30 and 40-year-olds. We primarily rely on Instagram
Yeah.
for our strategy. Doesn't mean we don't have a Facebook page. It doesn't mean we don't do other things, but we invest more of our limited time and resources on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so, and I bring that up because you have to be pretty honest about who your primary target is. And if you were talking about this 5 years ago, they would say, be everywhere. It's the same thing. Mr. Beast does this, and you're like, well, we're not Mr. Beast. Even our church, like we're one of the biggest churches. Like
Mr.
we,
Beast also gives loads of money away to people to do crazy things every year.
I know. So like, I would say focus on the channel that produces the most fruit and really limit it. Doesn't mean you don't have to double post. But like really focus more energy on one platform. And then I would say you need to ask more questions and don't use these platforms to just promote your events
Oh,
and
that's
your
great.
things. And I think that's the big thing is like we're all of us, everybody in ministry, we're trying to get more people to show up, more people participate. And if I just look, like, it's funny. I was thinking about this today because I had a friend of mine who I follow. He's like a theologian, digital ministry, like expert deal. And he's in the UK and he's a really smart dude. He started, like, I followed him because of his like thought process
Mhm.
on these topics. He started to only retweet on X political takes about what's going on in the Middle East. And by the sixth retweet, I unfollowed him.
Yeah, you bailed.
I bailed because like I didn't follow him for that. And so my encouragement is that don't just if all your posts are show up to this event, attend this Bible study, we need to see you on like if it's just asking them to do things, then it's kind of like a penny saver ad. So you need to think about how do you leverage the weekend to engage people. So ask more questions from the weekend, use it as asking questions, feedback. Doesn't mean you don't promote things, but I think that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah, that's good. I like the idea, even for our smaller churches that can't go omni-channel or don't have staff to run social media accounts, is find a volunteer or person in your church who's already there on that account. Maybe they're really good at Facebook, and then delegate that to them so that you can do what you said. Treat it. I think our buddy Dave Adamson says to use social media like a telephone and not a megaphone.
Yeah, that's good.
To don't
Yeah.
broadcast, because we don't go places to hear announcements. That's the most boring news feed ever. We do want to see what's going on, but really we want to connect with people. My family and friends want to see what I'm up to and where I'm at in the world. And the same is true for people who follow your church. They do want to know when your events are, but that's not primarily why we attend church, right?
Yeah, and I love this idea that you are calling out, Chris, because one of the tricks, kind of that I recommend to most churches when they're asking about anything in the area of digital, if you can stand up on a Sunday and say like, "Hey, we really want to take Instagram more seriously. If you have like 10 times more followers than our church account, can you volunteer and help us?"
Yeah.
Like just because like
Ask.
trust me,
Yeah.
there are so many of these domains that I don't know anything about, or I know only, but I don't need to. I just need to empower people. And usually the first step is providing a space for people who have that skill set to serve your church in that area, and then start listening to them and be, you still need to guide them and coach them because you're not trying to, do all the influencer stuff. You're not trying to do all the trend video things, but like you can learn a lot. Trust me, there are people that are skilled in your church. And so I usually start at, do you have more followers than our church? Great. You're hired.
In. So we've talked a little bit about online church. This question, can you further explain the host versus the online pastor? Is this outside of your normal church service or the pastor being the online pastor? It's a good
Yeah.
question.
And these role definitions obviously are going to vary, but I kind of mention this because this kind of became very popular during COVID, was to like stream your services on Facebook and YouTube and various platforms. And what I mean by this is that a host is somebody who just is maybe on video, talks to people, maybe they're in the chat only, like just kind of like they're just making sure everything works.
Like
They're
Laura.
not, they don't
Laura
maybe
is our assistant in the chat. hosting today.
Yep. Like they're just the facilitator. They might unlock, it's like they're just kind of unlocking the room, just getting it all set up. And so you first need somebody who just kind of like makes sure everything works. When I first got involved in online ministry, I wasn't a pastor, but I just made sure the stream worked. Somebody was in the chat, stuff was followed up on. I pointed out stuff. I was just there. A online pastor, and you don't need to use the word online, but a pastor means somebody is actually shepherding the community.
Mm.
They're making decisions for online. They're representing. And so there's lots of ways churches do this of all certain sizes. Like some churches hire, like for our church, we have an online pastor. We're obviously a very big church and our online community people tithe. We can staff it because of those tithes. Like there's reasons why we have that. But you can also have a volunteer online pastor. You can call them online director. But essentially it moves from something that somebody just kind of like makes happen to somebody's actually purposely shepherding. And that's how I think of it. And when I stepped into an online pastor role, in 2010, 2012 time, I started to actually like advocate for our community. When I was watching online, our pastor would say something. I was like, oh, our online community doesn't have that. I need to go figure out how they can have that. And so that's how I would separate. And you can do that in a volunteer setting. You can do that in a staff setting. This is why I recommend often, like 99% of churches in the world do not need an online pastor. You just need to empower a volunteer to do it. You only get an online pastor if it's part of a very specific vision. But it's really about empowering everybody to figure it out.
Yeah, that's great. There are, when you think about the body of Christ and how we're all built to do a specific thing and have a purpose, there are a lot of people in your church that just need to be asked, that have the skill set for spaces. I think a limiting factor, I've been at smaller churches, is I can't do it because I don't know anybody. We don't have anybody on staff to do it. But chances are there are people in your church that have a gifting, have the skill set, and just need to be asked.
Yeah, and it's usually you recognize it with passion. Like Pastor Rick Warren, our founding pastor, would always say, like, people would come to him early on in the church and complain about something at the church, like, why doesn't this program do this, or why don't you have this? And he would say, you're the person to solve it.
Yeah, sounds like you got that burden.
I know. And so, like, there are, again, it's the idea is that there's a lot of good things that we can be doing, but what are the great things? And so it's like, you in your role, maybe you need to be doing this, but if somebody pops up and says, like, we should be doing this, it's usually the answer is like, okay, the answer isn't like, if we're going to do it, the question is, are you going to do it? And I would encourage you, if people are like, why aren't our stream better? Or why don't we have this or that or that? Like, I remember we had somebody come to our church and they were complaining about something about our app. And, again, most churches don't need apps and all that, but we have an app. And so, yeah, just to put that out there. But I found out, like, they worked at EA Sports and they built games online and they had this crazy title. And I literally went, okay, well, we can't compete with this. But like, he started to become somebody I just sent ideas to get to help us.
That's a great example.
Like, it's a very but again, you don't need like the EA Sports or the VR church builder, but you have people, like, one of the biggest things, there are small and medium-sized business owners in your community that have to figure out digital. They are prime candidates.
Yeah.
Because they're in the same, ecosystem as your church. And like, how do they run ads? How do they do this? How do they use their website? I bet they have answers to help you.
That's great. Good insight there, Jay. Hey, if you guys have any questions, keep them coming in. Hit that Q&A button and we'll get it on the stage. So staying on the topic of online pastoring, online experience, how do you handle online viewers and membership? So for people who are part of the online community that may not be local, often in other countries, we see this with missionaries or other people that, expats that have moved overseas for one reason or another, but still want to be involved. So how do y'all handle that at Saddleback, and how might a smaller church address the same situation?
Yeah, this is a very important question. I do think churches, digital has opened up a lot more options for us. All of a sudden people can watch from, a couple states or a country over, and you're like, "Oh, what do I do with this?" And it's not something that we cover in seminary. And, like these are new problems we're solving. And so like it's you gotta my encouragement is for most churches to thoughtfully go through this. So like for example, I bring up the question is you can be a spiritual resource for churches, for people far away, or you can be their church. And both are legitimate options. And I really would encourage you is that if you're gonna call it church and be a church for like an expat or somebody traveling, or like thoughtfully walk through the each step of that. Are you gonna offer them benevolence? Are you gonna marry and bury them? What does that mean? And if you don't want to do that, then don't do it. Just be a spiritual resource. There's all sorts of people throughout time and now that are spiritual mentors of mine, but I don't go to their church. They're not my pastor. And so I would answer that. Are you going to be a spiritual resource for people far away? Or are you going to be their church? And so for us in our model, we do offer remote membership. But we do have a high ask for them. And the way we solved this was you have to be in physical community with other people, or you have to be working towards it. And so we don't encourage or try to like provide examples where like you're just watching by yourself and you don't have any physical near community. We try to provide all the stories we tell where like you need life with other people. And so you can become a remote member, but you're committing to starting a physical group in your community and ultimately launching an extension, which is a like house church experience. And we've obviously with me in my role and so forth, we've thoughtfully walked through that over the last decade. Like what does that look like? But that's how I would kind of address it. There's other exceptions like the three S's or sickness. There's sickness reasons why people can only engage online. There's seasons of life. Like I always bring up like traveling seasons, or even like maybe you have a kid that, you're new parents and it's really hard. Like, and there's all sorts of reasons there. And then security, there are legitimate security risks. Domestically and internationally, there are a lot of reasons domestically. People are in a hard relationship, they can't get away, and maybe they can only engage online. We have a lot of that. And so like those three S's are reasons why online engagement might be a more permanent solution for a season for people. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it, but that's how we've kind of wrestled through it.
So I really like that you're not saying, "Hey, this is your church, be isolated wherever you are." You're really encouraging people to say, "Hey, you found our stream, you like the teaching from our church, you want to be a follower of Christ. Well, get connected to other believers around you. Invite them into the experience that you're having, and then share that journey together." I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we try, like we say a lot. If you watch our streams in our events online, you'll hear everybody say a lot like, "Hey, we're so glad that you're watching on YouTube this week, but we believe church is much more than just watching church, that you need to be in community." So I want to encourage you right now, like before you close out the stream or before you go on to watch something else on YouTube or scroll through, Instagram, like consider joining a group with us, because life is meant to be done with other people. And so we use verbiage like that a lot to kind of go like, yeah, it's awesome. We have tens of thousands of people that watch every week, but we need to get more people in community. And so I think you do that through the way you talk about it, the way you pitch it. And also the other reality, it's also how you resource it. And so like think about this. Again, this is why we all have limited time and resources, no matter our size. And so the idea is that like if like I'm trying to think that how to say this like in the most helpful way, but like if you look at the size of our team, like at our church, we have like right now we only have two full-time staff on our online community team.
Okay.
We have a pastor over the community, and then we have a groups pastor on our team. We have very limited production people.
Hmm.
And I bring that up because like most of our resources are focused on hiring pastors that can scale our groups and our volunteers. We're not trying, like in our model, it's not this fancy production. It's a well done production, but we try to minimize that because we're not trying to like, and so like, I know a lot about your strategy based off of how you're staffed or you're volunteered. I could tell what's important. And so I bring this up, like, you don't you might just need to have a volunteer who's a shepherd, who's good at building teams and systems. And maybe like you just need to empower the groups leader at your church to be over online, because that's how you get more groups. And so like I bring that up as like how you're structured kind of drives the results.
Yeah. Well, shifting gears just a little bit, how do you bridge the age gap of core older members not interested in using tech while also attracting younger members that want that technology?
Yeah, that's definitely something that we've wrestled through. We talked about this, I think, last
Mm,
week, that it's like the baby boomers created the internet. So I really don't think technology is a an age thing. I think it just becomes more easier for certain generations to embrace it because it's more in their like ethos.
yeah.
So I do think it's really, so the two ways we kind of wrestle through this, I do think it's important in the stories you tell and the people you put on camera that you represent like your full breadth of your church. So
Yeah.
like I think it's important to bring all sorts of people on stage to host your services, or even to like be stories you tell. And so like you tell younger stories, you tell older stories, and you kind of show like we're a church of all stages of life. So that's one way you do it. Second, I do think that there is a place to have events and trainings to help people navigate the ever-changing landscape,
Oh, that's
you
good.
know? And so like I think like I bring up the example, like we had, 15 years ago, I hosted this Facebook for Dummies class because Facebook was just booming like crazy. A great example, there could be a place for your church to host like an AI for dummies type of thing, like how to navigate this. And I think it's important that we help older generations use these technologies, primarily because it's how they're interacting with their kids and grandkids. I think that's like a huge
Yeah.
thing. Um, and I think it's also important for the younger generations to get insight on how to navigate an ever changing world, because I think, older generations have gone through these waves already.
Hmm.
And I think it's important for us to get wisdom. So one of the biggest, the last thing I'll say on this, the biggest way we do this is I make sure my leadership team has some gray hair. Um, you know what I mean? Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, there, yep. And I think it's important is you need that wisdom together. You need the youthful like vision,
Yeah.
drive or go get it, but you also need the steady hand. And I think you do that. We primarily do this with our volunteer teams and make sure it's both and. And honestly, I find I find the older generations, like my volunteers that are amazing like this, they're the most passionate about new things because they want to reach their kids and their grandkids. Like
Uh,
they want their church to be engaging on this. So I don't our churches, our volunteer teams tends to skew more older because they're so excited. They want their church. Like I think about it this way, like I have a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 9-year-old, and I am solving problems at my church because I want this church, my church, to be a church that they can grow up in healthy. I'm solving problems
yeah.
because I want it to be relevant for them. And I find most people that are older feel the same way.
Yeah, you're right. So there was somebody in last week's webinar posted that they're 75 years old and they have actually done trainings for their generation and younger on how to use new technologies that the church may be um, trying to use. So that's
That's
good.
awesome.
I love that people are getting involved. And I think about too, my parents, they were a little resistant to having iPods and
Yeah.
iPhone. Do I really need this smart thing? And then once they have them and see how much easier it makes finding directions, places, and digital menus that happen a lot during COVID, and just other simple interactions, even Amazon shopping that you
Yeah,
can.
I think it's natural to understand whenever something new is introduced, fear is the natural impulse. And
Mm.
I think it's okay to be like have your hands up, like what's going on. It's like putting your credit card online.
Oh yeah. Woo.
Like that
I
was a
was
huge like
terrified when it first happened.
I know. It was like, who would ever do that? There's a
Yeah.
famous commercial. I talk about this in my book as well, where like, they're interviewing people at Burger King, like I think it was the late 80s, like using a credit card at Burger King. And they're like, why would you ever do that? Like, why don't you have like a couple of dollars in your pocket? It's kind
Yeah.
of the joke, you know? And then you fast forward, it's like everybody has it. You wouldn't function that way. And I bring it up because like people think this iteration is going to be the iteration that convince everybody. And really, it just needs to be helpful and solve problems. And so there's all sorts of things that happening. Like AI is a great example. Most people, I don't think, are going to be like using AI like models in the way we think. I think it's just going to work at your bank, or it will work behind the scenes with your credit card, or it will work with, you know, your AT&T service, and you're not even going to realize you're using it. And so I bring it up like it's okay when people are fearful of something, don't be shocked by that. Just figure out their problems. And I do think that there's a way our churches can create trainings and programs to help people in these areas, and it could be a great like way to reach people and train people. And there's all sorts of ways you can solve this, but those are some of the things we've done.
Yeah, invite people in. My wife and I and a few friends of ours put on a training called Keeping Kids Safe in a Digital World.
That's a great one.
And it was really about moderating the internet, using tools like Griffin and, way back in the day, Circle.
Yeah, circle, and like I think that's the one that is a great, Chris, like that one, like helping parents navigate. Because even like, you know, those are the questions like when my 15-year-old got a phone, you know, I
Yeah,
spent a lot of time like, how do I do this? Like, what's the best way? And I'm pretty,
locking it down.
I know it's like, okay, what are the rules? And you know, because I will say like screen time rules on Apple devices is one of the most. It's like calculus sometimes.
Yes, I agree. But super helpful even as an outreach program. So you have a lot of people in your community that just hand their kids an iPhone and say, "Here you go," and that's the worst thing you could ever do.
Yeah,
And younger, we're giving them these devices that have untethered, unfettered access to anything in the world, good, bad, ugly.
I know.
But we have that responsibility to help shepherd them in that. So an educational course could be a way to leverage technology to bring people that aren't involved in your church into your church. Love that. So here's an easy one for you. What is the name of your book?
Online church is not the answer.
All right, online church is not the answer. And then a follow-up of it, I'm going to add this one to the stage. It appears that they're looking for
Yeah.
cliff notes, maybe a summary.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you got here for Roger? Thanks, Roger. Great question.
Yeah, great question. If you go to my YouTube channel, I actually have a summary video on it, like within
Oh,
20
that's
minutes.
helpful. I bet
So
we can put that in the chat.
yeah, it's actually, I think it's the pinned video on my YouTube channel. So if you
Okay.
go, like I have a just summary where I walk through my book. So I think you can also, if you want to get fancy, you can go into ChatGPT and you can ask for a summary. I think it will summarize it.
What? If you just type in summarize Jay Kranda's book for me?
I'm curious if it will know that, but it might. That's a good now I got to do this right here. But yeah, but I would check out. I have a 20-minute summary on my YouTube channel that you can check out.
Well, and related to that, somebody asked if there would be a transcript of this workshop available. And I'm going to add it to the stage from Don. And Don, to teach you a little YouTube trick, if you go to YouTube and then go down to the description of the video and then click more, scroll down a little bit, you'll see a transcript there button. You can click on that and you can then get the transcript from almost any video on YouTube.
That is a great pro tip right there. I love that.
It's one thing I do if I'm trying to fix something or want to learn something quickly. Sometimes I'll grab the transcript, post it into ChatGPT, tell it to give me a summary of what I need to know, and then move on from there.
Yeah, I actually found the link. So here's the link in the chat.
All right, thanks, Jay. Don't run away to watch it. Save it for later.
I know that's the problem with streaming. I always say that to people streaming their services on YouTube or Facebook is that they're just one click. Like they just see one, like, oh, a recipe for a new cookie. And it's they leave your service.
I am out. All right, let's see. We asked that one here. Well, we talked about this last week. You mentioned that y'all use Tidely Tap or tap discs. This question what are the main differences between the tap pads and the QR code experience? And then
Yeah,
maybe
it's
talk
a
about how
really
like a small church could use them in their services.
yeah, this kind of goes back to how do you get more people to watch online to fill out a form? Like how do you
Mm,
get info? I think the hardest part about this is we live in a era of people don't like friction to things. Like people like how many times do you click on something you're like, I don't want to log in. I don't want to give my
I
email.
want it to be easy. I
I
wanna
want it to be
get
easy.
what I'm looking for. I don't wanna give you my information. Yeah, just show me
Yeah.
what I'm
And
looking for.
so the answer to this is technically a QR code in a tap is the similar type of, thing. You just pull up your phone, you scan a QR code, it goes to a link. You tap, pulls up a link. It's the same mechanism. The thing with tap is that it's less friction.
It's even
So
easier than a QR code.
it's easier because you have to like open up the camera app, you have to focus, and then you have to tap the thing that pops up. Where a tap experience is literally you tap and then you click the link and there it is. So it's shaving seconds off of an experience. And so you are this is where you're just this gets into the realm of stewardship. Like how do you like try to squeeze more out of something and make it more seamless for somebody? And so you do this because of new people and maybe, disengaged members that like they don't want to pull out your phone. And so like I don't think what I've noticed with these types of experiences is that you can increase by a 10-20% margin typically in big call to action moments. It's not going to be weekly, but like you'll get better engagement. But there isn't to be candid, there isn't a huge difference in it. It's just easier. And so more people do it.
Yeah. It's like you said, friction. And I'm still getting used to Apple Pay.
Yeah.
But when you think about the difference in Apple Pay and even
Yes.
cash or using a debit card, you still have to get the card out of your pocket and then you got to swipe it and then maybe you enter your PIN. But with Apple Pay, you just open it, tap it, done.
Yeah. And we're kind of in an era now of like, again, kind of going from, paying by cash to credit cards or debit cards to credit cards. And Apple Pay is this huge deal. Like where like most people are using Apple Pay, but still a lot don't.
Mhm.
Just these experiences of that frequency that the tap kind of goes into, it's going to become more seamless. And so I do think it's easier. I don't think it's this like revolutionary thing. Your church, it's not going to solve all your problems, but I think it will
Right.
drive more engagement.
Yeah, that's good. Uh, Going back to social again, what suggestions do you have for leveraging Sunday content on social media during the week other than sharing key points of sermons? That's a good question, Karen.
Yeah, that's a big question. I, to me, the ones that do this the best, they're actually creating like short form, like vertical videos, like reels, and they're taking key points from the weekend. So, like an example of this, let's say your pastor talks about getting into community and talks about some verse, let's say a James verse or a verse in Acts, Acts 2 or Acts 4, talking about being in community. And so he preaches a 40-minute sermon on this topic, and it's great. Where I've seen this the best is that people take that content and they'll take the call to action and they have other people on staff or other volunteers shoot a vertical video piece of content to go like, oh, Pastor Steve talked about this week. I
Ah,
was thinking about like I need to start a group, and so what you're doing is that you're taking different demographics and they are contextualizing the point for them, and that's where you can, and you're empowering. And one of the cool things I bring this up a lot, but I remember there was a church here in Southern California, that I think it was New Song Church here in Southern California. This is years ago. They did this like Lent 40-day Lent kind of thing, and our church doesn't do Lent, but what they did was over 40 days, they had the youth ministry create vertical videos.
wow.
And it was really cool because I know this church is a very famous church, like popular church in our area. But I saw every day these really like simple vertical videos, and I saw young people over 40 days talking about a verse.
Hmm.
And I still to this day think about that like simple thing. And so the my encouragement is whatever you're doing during the week, it doesn't just have to be the teaching pastor. I
Yeah.
would encourage you, is there a way you can get more people in your church on camera in very simple ways with your phone? You can record, and it's just cool to kind of go on on a church page and see like, oh, what did that 19-year-old think about the sermon and what took the way, or what did that 16-year-old, or what did that 25? And so like I bring it up, like you don't need to do just that demographic, but I think there's ways to kind of hear from other people in the church. What did they take away? Because trust me, if you interview 3 people after church service, like you'll hear different things that maybe you didn't consider, but it's still on topic. But that's one creative idea.
That's a great idea, because we hear from our pastors every Sunday. But taking the message, when you were talking, I was thinking about a lot of the reaction videos that are now popular where people are watching and making commentary. So even if you were to have the clip from your pastor and then run and then get some commentary from a different age group or a
That's a great.
different person and perspective, I like that.
What one like extra feature, if you haven't used, there's a lot of these services that are available, but I've been super impressed by like a descript.com.
What is that? Is that
So
like sermon shots?
I know it is like a sermon shot. And so like, but like there's a lot of these services now, and I'm not sure of like sermon shots full features, but essentially you can like with Descript, I know that you can literally put a link to a YouTube message, and it will, with AI, auto recommend clips
Huh.
from the sermon, and then it will actually give you 45-second. And like I did this while I was promoting my book last year, where like it will just clip things, like it will take this whole thing and it will actually create vertical video. And there's a lot of these services out there, but like I've been impressed by AI like tools to kind of create
Yeah.
moments to kind of scale.
We've used Opus.
Yeah, Opus is great too.
Yeah, Descript. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's super. And the other thing with Descript, you can literally have like it will transcribe whatever you said from like a 30-minute deal. And if you just highlight the text, it will clip that moment of highlight.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It's pretty crazy. I was like, and again, these are things that cost money, and there's things to consider here, but I was like, I'm super impressed by these tools. And there's probably tools you're using that do this already. There's a lot of ways to do this now.
Yeah, you could use iMovie.
Yeah, you can. That would be, you can do it on a Neo color MacBook too, you know?
You'd use Paint. We got a few more minutes here. If you have any questions for Jay, put them in the Q&A and we'll get them up on the stage. Let's see. We do have a couple more about this one. We've kind of talked on this a little bit, and it goes a little bit into engagement, but I think there's a different angle here. What is a good way to connect with the online community? We have people who watch and never comment. So I think we call them lurkers.
Yeah.
But not sure, one, how to get data to build a better connection, but what are some ways to think about early on? Like, what do you do to get the people that would rather remain anonymous to identify themselves and then to help move them into engagement, into community?
Yeah. So a couple things that we do. One is I would really encourage you to try to create a fourth space, meaning an environment.
Or space.
Yeah. A forced space. No, fourth space. I know.
Another
Now I feel like I'm in speech, like it's second grade for me. No, a fourth space is like, the idea there is that you're creating a space for people to interact when there's no services going on. So this would be like a WhatsApp group, a Mighty Networks, a Slack. There's a lot of ways to do this now. But so like create a space that you encourage people to kind of go like, hey, this is, I kind of jokingly call it, it's like your patio or your like lobby of your online ministry kind of. And so that's one way, and like make that a thing. You engage. So there's one way. I do have a blog post. If you search fourth space, like where I talk about this to kind of unpack it in more detail. There's one way. doing monthly Zooms if you want to build more online only and invite people in and kind of say it like, hey, it's a chance to hang out with me and our team and make it reoccurring and don't focus on hundreds of people, focus on just having a couple people.
Yeah.
And if you repeat that, that's one other. Lastly, another really helpful tip, if you can do this, if you're using any type of way to store data for your people, like a church management system, try to figure out, can you run any type of report in your database? Who are the people that are like an hour away from your church that are engaging online? Can you get the data of everybody who's an hour away and just figure out like who are these people and where are they? And then figure out a way that you can communicate to those people. And so like I always like another way to do this is like people will ask me like they want to build out an online ministry and do all this stuff. And I go, do you know who is actually giving and watching like an hour away? And if you just start with that list, those are your people that are like your future volunteers. Those are the people that should have your phone number. Like, and so like this is why like, and again, this is a bigger strategy, but like we have in our database a way to be like online community, like elect as a campus so that people can affiliate with the online community. And then I have a way to communicate. And if I start sending them emails and communicating them directly, they start to engage more. Maybe not in the chat, but they'll engage in our fourth space. They'll engage on email, maybe on the Zooms. But I know that's a lot. I'm trying to condense a lot. My book unpacks this in great detail, but that's one. Those are three things.
I feel like it's something that I have never really thought of because, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that might see the gap between online engagement and in-person attendance as insurmountable. But what I just heard you say was, if you can get people to take one small step in to get closer, and obviously the goal is in-person community, fellowship together, following the Lord, sharpening each other in an intentional discipleship community. But even for somebody who's watching online that would think, anybody that would say, I could never darken the doors of a church because it would burn down or I'd get struck by lightning.
Yeah.
If they're going to be there in the shadows and they know the truth is there, well, then they can join that WhatsApp group or that group me and then just be a part of messaging.
Yeah. 100%. I do think people overrate the chat experience in a lot of these. I mean, again,
what do you mean?
What I mean by this is that there's a lot of energy to get people to enter the chat on a stream, like on YouTube or Facebook.
Even on our team.
Even us, like we're trying to do this. The reality is most people want to just watch. They don't want to talk while they watch.
Yeah.
And so like and really the precedent here is people have watched ministries like Life Church and Elevation that have very dynamic chat experiences.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that a chat is dynamic because of how many people are engaging. And when you only have 100 people watching, and if maybe on average less than 3% engaged, your chat's going to be very quiet. The reason why Life Church and Elevation and these ministries have a very dynamic chat is because they have tens of thousands of people watch. And if 1% of 10,000 engage the chat, it looks like a lot.
Yeah, it looks. I mean, if you've ever watched a YouTube video where it's like,
yeah, so like, and I think this is why like people don't realize like ratio wise, you probably have the same amount of those.
Yeah.
And so like, and I just don't think chat on streams is a great way to build community. It's like talking or texting during church service if you're in person. Think about moving that experience into something like a Zoom or a WhatsApp, like a fourth space. That's how I would encourage people. And I'm not saying having a dynamic chat is not helpful. It is. I just don't think it's, again, limited time and resources. Don't overthink that. Try to move into like more discipleship type of settings. Try to get more people on video. Try to actually see them like during the week.
Yeah, good question. Somebody asked, does Tidely have group chat? Tidely does have chat. We just released two-way SMS communications, and I believe we're further building out group functionality in there. So thanks for asking that, Bob. That's exciting. The two-way push notifications was a big one because you can text. Of course, you can do SMS in a group, but then you get that one Android user and it all goes crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. our church is on the Rock RMS platform, and
Mhm.
version 18 of their platform released like a channel feature where like groups in their system can kind of message with each other. And I'm working really hard right now with our team in the near future. How do we make it where if you have our Saddleback Church app and you're a group in our system, you can chat with your group in our app? And
Great.
we're prioritizing that feature because I believe those type of environments, those fourth spaces are really important moving forward. And again, you don't need an app. You don't need to be on Rock to do that. You can just do that with WhatsApp. We're going to have obviously more resources. So we're thinking of it as more helpful in our model. But like the fourth space thing is so important. And you can do this with a group me, with a WhatsApp, there are tons of free ways to do this now, which
Yeah.
are really cool.
Well, I like it, and low effort for the reward of helping somebody
Yep.
take that one step in. Yeah, that's great, Jay. We are coming near to time. I have one more question, and then maybe some time if you want to give some closing thoughts. What is one specific thing that you have done that helped discipleship from just streaming to one big step?
Ooh, okay. That's a big one. I like that. Yeah, I'm a big believer, and I if you've engaged in this series, you've probably heard me say this, that I do think most of the opportunity with integrating digital and technology into your church isn't around just more eyeballs.
Mm,
Like, and I think a lot of people, this is why the church online phrase kind of bugs me is, and I understand why it exists, but it's not just about church isn't just watching a stream or attending in person. Church is about much more than just being sitting in a pew. And one of like a big thing that I've learned myself, even in my own learning kind of setting, is I I love I'm a very active learner, so I'm always listening to books, I'm reading a book, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm watching a video course about something. And I think one of the prime ways that ministries and churches can embrace digital and really amplify is move more of your midweek trainings and really important like content strategies to podcasts and on demand like services like LMSs. And I bring that up is that we really think to train people, they have to be in a room. And I think there's a lot of what we do, and I bring this up like our church has done this many times, but one example of this is like we have a marriage ministry at our church. And the way historically that's been done is you throw a big event, you get everybody in a room. And what we've learned is it's not that we don't do that event anymore, is that we do less of those events in person and we have a podcast strategy to provide more relevant training more frequently with less friction and the requirement to have to get a babysitter and have another night out. And so some of the most exciting stuff we've done recently, and I think most churches should embrace, is embrace training and content strategies that are using podcasts and on demand. Because what's cool is now what happens is like, let's say you want somebody to sign up for your ministry, they can sign up on a Sunday. You can send them the training. They can watch it or go through it during the week. And then when you meet them the next Sunday before they serve, you meet them half an hour early. Hey, you got any questions? You want us to review anything? And that can be a better learning environment. So those
sure.
are the things. Again, that's not revolutionary, but I really want people to think when you embrace digital and technology, it's not about not doing the in person. It's about using it together. And a lot of training stuff like that. There's a lot of integrations that could be big wins for your ministry quickly.
Sure. And then you could record the training once, and then you've got it for as long as it's relevant, and you don't have to type your time over and
Yeah,
over.
like the question is, what are the things that you have to say over and over and over and over again? It's the same thing. If you keep having to repeat the same things, that could be a training video.
Yeah.
That can be a,
Totally
you
the
know, and
document.
And we all love podcasts. How cool is it? There's so many cool things that like you could just make it a podcast and again, I say podcast, any type of format,
Sure.
but people can listen to it passively while they're, doing something or driving around like, and I could list all the stuff I listen to. And I think churches should utilize some of those spaces more.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Jay, thanks so much for taking time with us over the last 3 weeks to hang out and share your knowledge. Thanks for your generosity. Tell people the URL again where they can go get your book and other resources for half off with code TIDELY.
Yeah, if you go to jaykranda.com, there on the page, you can download my book, or I have my digital goal guide. And if you put in the code, most of that stuff is like a cup of coffee at McDonald's. So just use the code TIDELY and checkout. It'll be available through the end of March, that code.
Okay, through the end of March. So you got a couple weeks, but don't wait. Go today.
Do not hesitate.
We will be sharing clips. One question came in about the fourth space video. Do you have a clip of that maybe on your YouTube channel?
I have something. Yes, I'll find out. Yes.
Yeah. So Google it. We may email it to you. We'll see what we can do. Sign up for Jay's newsletter, and we're grateful that you were here today. Thank you so much for advancing the gospel all over the world. See you next time.